I was eating lunch when Instructor Vorath told me I was going to die. He did not say it that way exactly. He stood at the edge of my table in the academy cafeteria, 4 eyes arranged in that downward pattern I had learned meant professional concern, and he said, "Cadet Reyes, the Sindari Badlands exercise begins in 40 minutes. I would like to formally recommend, one final time, that you withdraw." I picked up my fork. The food on my tray was the Academy's version of rice and beans, pale, dense, and about 60% less flavorful than what my grandmother made on Sunday afternoons back home in New Mexico. I ate it anyway because I was hungry, and because in 40 minutes I was going to need every calorie I had. "Thank you, Instructor," I said. "I'm not withdrawing." His secondary throat sacs pulsed. That meant a sigh. I had spent 8 months learning what every sound and movement meant in Keth body language, because nobody at this academy had spent 8 months learning mine, and somebody had to do the work. "You understand," he said, "that no non-Keth cadet has passed this exercise in 300 years of academy history. You mentioned that yesterday. And the day before." "Yes. The atmospheric toxicity alone, 0.73 on the lethality index, 58 degrees surface temperature, ammonia concentrations, sulfur compounds, low oxygen, high particulate." I put another forkful of food in my mouth. "I have the numbers memorized, Instructor." He looked at me, the way I had seen many instructors look at me over the past 8 months. Not with cruelty exactly, but with the specific exhaustion of someone who believes they are watching a small creature walk toward a very large problem. "You are a human," he said. "Your species has been in space for 140 years. You have no exoskeletal integument. You breathe a very specific ratio of one gas. You have, if I may say, soft tissue, where most species capable of this exercise have structural reinforcement." "I know what I'm made of," I said. I finished my lunch. I put the tray away. I walked to the equipment bay. He watched me the entire time. The transport dropped me at the edge boundary of the Sindari Badlands at precisely the scheduled hour. The Keth pilot said something through the intercom that my translator rendered as "good fortune, small mammal," which I chose to interpret as sincere. The hatch sealed. The transport climbed and shrank and disappeared into the copper-colored sky. I stood at the edge and looked at what was in front of me. The sky was the color of a very old bruise. The light coming through the chemical haze was yellowish and thick, like light filtered through dirty glass. The ground was black volcanic basalt and white crystal formations that grew up from it at sharp angles, and everything, every rock, every crystal, every flat surface, was covered in a fine red dust that I could already taste at the back of my throat through my suit's filters. My suit's sensors ran their scan. The display showed me numbers I already knew. Low oxygen, high heat, ammonia at levels that would, without protection, cause meaningful damage to human lung tissue within a few hours. Particulate matter, dense enough to erode exposed skin over a full day. The mission was simple, in the way that very hard things are always described as simple. Survive 72 hours, collect environmental samples from 3 coordinates, and transmit a signal from the far ridge. Keth cadets did this in standard gear. Their biology did most of the heavy work. Their bodies filtered, regulated, and adapted in ways that mine could not. I had compensated differently. For 3 weeks before this exercise, I had gone to the equipment bay after curfew. Not every night. That would have been noticeable, but often enough. I had modified my suit piece by piece, using components from 3 separate supply requisitions and 2 upperclassmen who found my project interesting enough to assist without asking too many questions. I had tested each modification. I had practiced the repair sequences until I could do them by feel in the dark. When the quartermaster had processed my food requisition and raised one of his eyebrows, Keth have 4 of them, at the quantity, I had told him, humans run on a different fuel curve. He had approved it without further comment. The first coordinate was 11 kilometers north. I started walking. This is the thing about humans that most species do not initially understand. We are endurance animals. We are not the fastest creatures that ever evolved. We are not the strongest. We have no venom, no armor, no natural weapons beyond 2 hands that are good at gripping and throwing but not much else. In a direct physical confrontation, What we have, what we have had for 100,000 years before we ever left our planet, is the ability to keep moving long after everything else has stopped. Our ancestors hunted by following prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion, not by outrunning it, by outlasting it. Walking and jogging, hour after hour, tracking, never stopping, sweating in the heat. Sweating being our body's remarkable and slightly undignified method of cooling itself, until the animal they were pursuing simply could not continue, and we could. The Sindari Badlands were hot. I kept moving. At the 2-hour and 40-minute mark, I reached the first coordinate. Sample collection took 6 minutes. I labeled it, sealed it, logged the time, and kept walking. I drank water on a schedule, not when I was thirsty. Thirst, I had learned in wilderness training years before this academy, is a late signal. By the time your body announces it needs water, it has already been needing it for a while. I drank ahead of the need. I kept moving. At the 9th hour, the sulfur concentrations in the atmosphere spiked. The sensors showed me where it was coming from. A vent field to the east, pushed west by the wind. I needed to go north. I adjusted northwest, added 2 kilometers to my route, and walked around the worst of it. It cost me time. It was the right decision. Every choice in survival is a trade, and the art is knowing which trades are worth making. Night came fast and hard. The temperature dropped 40 degrees in 90 minutes. The crystal formations cracked from the thermal stress. I heard them popping in the darkness, sharp and sudden like something breaking, echoing across the flat stone landscape. The sky went from bruise purple to a black so complete that my suit's display was the only light I could see. I found a rock overhang by following the terrain logic. Low ground near the vent fields held heat, high ground would be exposed to wind, and a slope break on the northern face would likely have natural shelter where harder rock had resisted erosion. I was right. The overhang was not large, but it was enough to break the wind and give me a surface at my back. I stopped. I ate. I want to be clear about this. I stopped and ate a full meal in the middle of a survival situation, because that was the correct thing to do. Humans need fuel. We need it regularly. The instinct to save food for later is understandable, but saving it in a way that lets your body begin to weaken is not saving anything. It is just slowing down the problem while creating a new one. I had calculated my food supply against my actual expected caloric burn in actual heat, doing actual work. I had enough. I ate what I was supposed to eat. Then, I slept for 4 hours. Because a tired human makes worse decisions, and worse decisions in this environment would kill me just as surely as the atmosphere would. I woke before dawn and started walking again. The second coordinate was 12 kilometers from the first. The terrain here was more broken. The crystal formations were taller, and the basalt was fractured in ways that created small drop-offs and gaps in the ground that required attention. I moved more slowly. I paid attention. Attention, in a dangerous place, is the thing that keeps dangerous places from becoming fatal ones. I collected the second sample at hour 19, labeled it, sealed it, logged it. 34 kilometers still to the far ridge. At hour 31, I passed a landscape feature that was not on the mission maps, a secondary vent field, smaller than the one to the east, with a shelf of dark rock above it that trapped the heat and made the air shimmer. My suit's temperature sensors spiked. I stopped, looked at it for a long moment, and went around it. Another added distance, another right trade. I had a conversation with myself during the long, flat stretch of the second day. This is something humans do and rarely admit to, talking through problems aloud, or sometimes just talking to stay present, to keep the mind working and connected. The silence of a place that has no life in it, no birds, no insects, no wind and leaves, is a heavier thing than most people expect. It has weight. It pushes on you in a way that fatigue alone does not. I talked about the things I was going to do when I got back. I talked about my grandmother's cooking. I talked for a while about the fact that I was going to get back, stating it as a simple fact rather than a hope, because the brain is an instrument that takes input seriously, and I wanted to give it accurate information about my intentions. I was going to get back. At hour 41, my left filter seal failed. I felt it before the suit alarmed, a faint increase in the sharpness of the air, a slight sting behind my eyes, That was the earliest detectable sign of ammonia exposure at low concentrations. The alarm came 3 seconds later. I was already stopped, already reaching for the patch kit, already running through the repair sequence. The patch kit I was carrying was rated for a different seal type than the one that had failed. This is important. The official kit would not have worked. My kit, the one I had assembled over 3 weeks of after-hours equipment bay visits, had components I had selected specifically because their material properties overlapped with multiple seal types, including this one. I had calculated the adhesion coefficients. I had tested the combination in the lab. I had packed the right tool, because I had thought, in advance, about what could go wrong. The repair took 7 minutes. My hands shook during part of it. They were precise anyway. Surgeons operate with trembling hands. Climbers attach safety equipment with cold, exhausted fingers. Humans have spent a very long time learning how to be functional while frightened, because we were frightened for most of our evolutionary history, and stopping never felt like a good option. The seal held. I kept walking. The ridge appeared at hour 63, a dark line against the copper sky, higher than the surrounding terrain. The signal tower's blinking amber light, just barely visible at its highest point. 9 kilometers. I walked 9 kilometers. The ridge face was loose rock and dense crystal formations, and a slope steep enough that the wind, which had been picking up in the late afternoon of the 3rd day, pushed against me with real force. I climbed using both hands, selecting each foothold with attention and intention, not rushing. Rushing on a technical surface in wind is how you slip. Slipping here, alone, with no recovery support closer than 3.5 hours by transport, was a problem I was not going to create for myself. The wind caught me 3 times on the exposed upper face. The 3rd time was the serious one, a lateral gust that hit me on a narrow section of the path and pushed me sideways hard enough that I went to one knee, both hands finding rock by reflex, the crystals sharp against my suit. I stayed there, pressed against the slope, and waited. The gust passed, my heart hammered in my chest, the way hearts do in those moments. Simply and completely, without any interest in being calm about it. I waited until I was ready, then I moved again. The beacon was at the ridge's highest point. I activated it at hour 68. The sample from the 3rd coordinate was in the collection box at the tower's base. I retrieved it, logged it, sealed it. I sat down. My legs hurt in the deep way that comes from real and sustained work. My throat was raw from trace sulfur exposure over 3 days. The patched filter seal had a faint whistle on each breath in, something I had noticed at hour 43 and monitored continuously since. It had held. It was holding now. My suit's display chimed. Signal received. Recovery unit en route. Estimated arrival, 3.5 hours. I looked at the sky. It was that burnt copper color again. Morning coming up behind the chemical haze. The light thickening from black to bruised purple, to something that was almost, if you were generous, gold. I was not dead. I was, by every measurement my suit could take, fine. I sat on the ridge of the Sindari Badlands and ate the last of my food and watched the sky change color, and I thought about nothing in particular, which is its own kind of luxury when you have been thinking carefully about everything for 3 days. Instructor Vorath was at the hangar bay when the recovery transport landed. I came down the ramp into the flat fluorescent light, and he was standing there, all 4 eyes open. In Keth body language, open eye direct address from a superior means acknowledgement. I had learned this in my 3rd week at the academy, from a cultural briefing that most cadets skimmed, and I had read 3 times. He said, "Cadet Reyes, you completed the exercise." "Yes, instructor." He was quiet for a moment. The hangar smelled like fuel and metal. My stomach was making itself known again. "I reviewed your suit telemetry," he said. "Your modifications were not approved in advance. No. Your patch kit was not standard issue. No. You anticipated the seal failure." "I tried to anticipate every failure I could think of," I said. "I probably missed some. I got lucky that the ones I missed didn't happen." He considered this. "There is a principle in Keth training," he said slowly. "Strength is the elimination of weakness. We identify what can fail, and we make it unable to fail. We build harder, train longer, remove the vulnerability entirely." He looked at me with careful attention. You could not do that, he said. Your biology has limits you cannot train away. And yet, he stopped. We learn to keep going with the vulnerability still there, I said. We cannot always fix the weak point, so we work around it. We prepare for it. We practice what to do when it breaks. Instructor Vorath was quiet for a long time. You will submit a full report, he said at last. Every decision and your reasoning. I will be revising the curriculum notes. He turned and walked away. I went to find food,